Have you ever tried to learn something new only to get stuck, frustrated, and then finally giving up? I've been there so many times in my life, but I finally discovered how to learn. And this changed everything. Now, my friends think it's easy for me to learn, but the reality is, I just know how to learn. And I'm going to share that with you today. So here are the principles I'm going to share today. Number 1, start small. Number 2, focus on what you'll actually use. Number 3, a little stress will do you good. Number 4, celebrate wins. Number 5, activate your creativity. Number 6, learning is contagious. And finally, number 7, teach others. So before we move forward, let me back up just for a second and set the stage. So in December 2019, I had a eBay business, but I decided to start freelancing on the side. And so I had a profile on Fiverr, so I created a couple of gigs. I created a couple on writing and editing because that was something I was comfortable with and something I enjoyed. But I decided I'd put one up there for Google Sheets as well, since I had used Google Sheets in my eBay business to track my sales and finances. So to my surprise, the Google Sheets gig was the one that got a lot more messages. So I was put in this unique position where I wasn't super good at Google Sheets, but I was getting lots of messages from potential clients asking, hey, can you do this? Now, I probably would have just taken this slow, except for now it's 2020, and due to things that had happened, I wasn't able to do my eBay business the way I was, and so put a lot of pressure on my freelancing. So I had to test everything I thought I knew about how to learn and how to get better at something, in this case, Google Sheets, to the real life test. And it wasn't just a theoretical thing. This was about, can I make money by learning as quickly as possible? And so with that, I put together these things that I've learned over the past several years about how to learn and how to learn more effectively. So with that, let's jump right in. So the first thing is start small. So how do you start small if you're already overwhelmed? The first point here is big goals overwhelm, right? And so one thing is to set manageable goals, but set them on a short time frame. So we can overestimate what we can do in a day, but sometimes we underestimate what we can accomplish in a year. And this is usually once you start getting going, right? Like if you're at a distance and you haven't learned anything. So when I first started learning Google Sheets, I thought I could do anything when I first started, but then when I started actually doing it, I realized how little that I actually knew. And if you actually counted how many times I said actually just then, you might be overwhelmed as well. But what happened was when I broke those things down and broke down that big goal of I want to be an expert to I want to learn one useful thing today, I was able to start breaking that big goal that was overwhelming into small goals that were achievable. And that slides right into this next thing, which is one simple step. So I also wanted to learn programming. Back in the day, I tried to learn Python. I did so much research on what language I thought would be the most useful, and I'd settled at Python at the time, and I took some courses, but it never stuck because I wasn't using it, and I didn't really even know where I was going with it. But I'd see these cool end results, right? I'd see these programs that I wanted to do, but I get frustrated if I tried to go straight at it. And so when I actually started learning JavaScript, what I began to learn how to do was to boil it down into simple steps. And so this would work even when a client or a potential client would message me and ask me if I could do a project. Or even if I was in the middle of a project. If I looked at the project as a whole, it would be super overwhelming and I couldn't figure out how to get it done. So what I'd do is when I felt overwhelmed, so when you feel overwhelmed, take a step back and think about it. How can I break this down into simple, achievable steps that you can take today? And so what that does then is it leads to the snowball effect, which is the more you learn, the more you'll learn. Learning doesn't add, it compounds. And so this doesn't necessarily make sense right off the bat, right? You think, well, if I learn one thing today, one thing tomorrow, and one thing the next day, at the end of that, I'll have learned 3 things. The thing is, learning isn't linear. At first, it does feel linear. So when I first started learning Google Sheets, it felt very linear. I'd learn this thing and I'd struggle with it for a long time because it's really hard, right? And sometimes you try to learn these simple things and It's challenging at first. But once I actually learned a simple thing and I was able to use it, and then I go learn the next thing, I wasn't actually learning 1 plus 1, I was actually learning a hybrid and a blend. And so that 1 plus 1 actually is more like 2.5 or 3. And so at first it may not be noticeable, but the more you learn, the more it all adds up and comes together. And this applies whether you're talking about Google Sheets, programming, or whatever it is that you're learning. So let's go to the next thing, which is focus on what you'll use. So one of the things with big goals that can be challenging is when you set these big goals, and so what you're trying to learn isn't something that you can actually utilize at the moment. And so unused is forgotten. And so one of the things with this is that our brain automatically prioritizes information and discards whatever it deems is irrelevant. So one of the crazy things about how to learn is we have to figure out how to work with our brains. So we're cooperating, not working against our brains or fighting our brain. And so this method is about whatever you use, your brain is automatically going to assign it as important. And so with that, the next stage is make it practical. So focus on learning things that you can and will use every day. Because why? Repetition will now be on your side. And so this is the reason why repetition is not one of my points, because if you focus on what you'll use, repetition is automatically happening. And so Benjamin Franklin has a great quote on this topic, and he says, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll learn." And so that's why I say focus on what you'll actually use, because that's how I learned best, and I know this is how you're going to learn best as well. So one more point in this is you got to keep it interesting. Back to what our brain does, right? Our brain automatically prioritizes information. Well, one thing is, if it's boring, your brain does not want any part to do with it. And this is why in school, right? When a subject bores you, it's so hard to learn. And so this is a super key trick, is if you can figure out ways to make it interesting. So sometimes what you're trying to learn already is interesting. You're excited, right? Like think about nerds. Nerds are usually excited about that information. So what I encourage you to do is become a nerd about whatever it is you're trying to learn. Make it exciting. And however you need to make it exciting for you, that's how you should do it. So if you thrive on competition, make it a competition. And if you have to compete with yourself, by golly, compete with yourself. Make it a personal record day. If you have to compete with others, sure, go for it. If you have to share your successes, again, go for it. But you gotta keep it interesting so your brain stays engaged and helps you to learn. So let's go to the next point. And this one may seem a little uncomfortable. And so I have 3 categories. 1, not enough stress. And that might sound like the place where you want to be is not enough stress. But let me explain this. So the second one is just right. And third is too much. So when I started learning Google Sheets, I found myself waffling between these 3 places. And it wasn't on purpose, it was just something that happened. So there's times when I got into a project and it was too much stress. And so what happens when you have too much stress, your body and your mind are overwhelmed, and this shuts down your creativity, shuts down your memory, shuts down your performance, and if you're like me, you're really struggling with not being useless. Now, if you don't have enough stress, this is the crazy thing. If your learning environment is too casual, your brain may catalog the information as not important and archive it. And so what I found for myself was if it wasn't being pushed a little bit. So I'm not saying you have to be stressed out to learn. What I'm saying is if that information isn't being pushed a little bit, isn't being tested a little bit, if there's maybe not just a little bit of stress at times with it, then your brain may not catch on to the fact that this information is important. So that brings us to just right. So science shows that if you have a little bit of stress, actually releases adrenaline and cortisol, which enhances memory and coding. And so think about it. What events do you remember most? And it's usually the ones that there's a lot of emotion with. Well, guess what? Stress is a kind of emotion. So what we're looking for here is we're not trying to be stressed out, but we want to add a little stress, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of cortisol to our learning experience. And this is why if you have to take a test, right? So who enjoys tests? Well, I mean, who doesn't enjoy tests? Now, one thing I want to say here though is I say a little stress is good, but you may need to redefine stress. Here's the thing a trick I learned about public speaking. So I used to be terrified of public speaking, but I've overcome that. And one of the things that helped me with it was redefining stage fright. So here's a little trivia that some of you probably know, some of you resonate with for sure. Do you know the top fear is actually public speaking? It's actually above death. So people will rather die than public speak. So here's the kicker though, that changes everything. How do you view that fear or that anxiety? And so for me, if I had to go speak in front of a group or whatever it was, and I was thinking about how I'm going to mess up, how I'm going to do whatever, if I take that emotion and I'm going to redefine it as excitement. So instead of saying, man, I'm terrified to get up and speak in front of this group of people, I redefine it in my brain and say, you know what? I feel a little anxious, but I'm going to be excited. I'm going to take this same energy, this emotional energy, I'm going to redefine it and repurpose it as excitement. So I'm not talking about manipulating yourself, but it's taking a step back and intentionally deciding to reframe the situation. Because usually what we're doing in our mind, right, and this is why the public speaking is above death, is we're correlating that fear to basically socially dying. Like my social life is going to die, my reputation is going to die if I do this and screw this up. But if I redefine that and say, you know what, it's actually not that big of a deal. If I screw it up, who cares? It's going to be okay. And when I start to reframe it, I'm giving my body, my emotions, my brain room to breathe, and I can take that emotional energy and repurpose it for something else. So now that emotional energy that was anxious and fear, I'm going to redefine it now as excitement. And so you can do the same thing as you approach learning. Take that stress level and redefine it as excitement, as working hard, as whatever it is, right? And if this takes a little bit to figure out, that's okay. It takes time to learn how to release stress, because that's really a big part of this whole thing. A little stress is good, but if you don't learn how to release it, it's going to build, it's going to build, and it's going to build, and you're going to be in that too much column. And then you're going to be overwhelmed, and your body and your mind are going to shut down. So learn to release stress in whatever way that is. And you can settle into that just right space where your body, mind, and emotions are working with you, not against you. And that takes us to our next point, which is celebrate wins. So if you're anything like me, I grew up thinking that doing a good job is just what was expected. Why would you celebrate doing a good job? It's just what you're supposed to do. But I had to learn to pause and realize that I was actually accomplishing something. I was actually learning, I was actually growing, and I need to learn to pause and recognize this so I can stay motivated to keep going. Because what gets celebrated gets repeated. This is basically a positive feedback loop, and sometimes all we have is a negative feedback loop. We fail and we get ourselves, right? But we need both. We need this positive feedback that if we actually do a good job, we recognize it, and maybe hopefully others recognize as well, because recognition triggers dopamine, and that helps you to stay motivated, to keep learning, to keep going, to keep doing what you're doing. So share wins with others, but make sure you're proud of you. If you're not proud of you, why would you keep going? So be proud of you. Look back occasionally to see how far you've come, and if you feel like you haven't come very far, maybe your measurement, maybe your goal is too big. Bring it back a little bit, dial it back a little bit. And if you feel discouraged by how far you've come, check out this quote by Robert Collier. Success is a sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. So if you're discouraged about how far you've come, make that goal a little smaller. Just make it that small effort done well. And then let that snowball effect start to kick into play and start helping you. And sometimes it takes a little bit to kick in. Celebrate that win today. Celebrate that win today so you can keep going. Activate creativity. Creativity is a soapbox topic for me. I love the idea of creativity. I love thinking about it, I love talking about it, because creativity is a superpower. But it's not a superpower for, a few lucky people. It's a superpower for everyone. It's a superpower for you. So I have some practical tips and tricks on how to do this with your everyday life and when it comes to learning. When you approach a project or a problem, don't settle for the first solution. Come up with 3 possible solutions before deciding on one. And so, granted, you're not always going to have time to do this. Okay, I get it. I'm busy too, right? We don't always have time to do this, but if you have a moment, if you have 3 minutes to do this, don't stop with the first solution. Look for a couple other solutions, and then it gives you the option to choose. And sometimes the first one was the best, but this starts to actually rewire your brain for creativity to look at more than one solution, because sometimes we get stuck where our brain just wants the shortest route, right? And so we settle for the shortcut, we settle for the easiest way, the easiest road. Sometimes what looks like the easiest road, though, is not the easiest road, and we end up burning ourselves in the end. So partner with creativity. Here's another thing. When you get stuck, step back and ask, is there another way? Again, this helps to build new neural pathways. And so I can't even tell you how many projects I had, and my, I'll say lazy brain, right? Maybe my stressed brain, I was kind of done, right? I just want to be done with this project. And a client would be like, hey, can you do this? And I'd be like, nope, no way. Nope, not it. And they're like, no, we really need this feature. So at this point, I have to step into creative mode. At this point, I don't think there's a solution. I'm going to step back and say, oh gosh, is there another way? And guess what? I would go back and look, is there another way? Sometimes there's not. But so many times I'd step back and look, is there another way? And I would come up with a brand new solution, something I'd not thought of before. And you know what? It was that snowball effect that I was talking about before. I was stressed in this moment, right? And I have to back off from that too much, right? I was in that too much place and I wasn't able to be creative. When I backed up just enough, backed off the stress level just enough, I was able to get into that just right mode. That creativity was able to give me a new path. And then because of that stress level, my brain baked that baby in and I learned something new. And you can too. So when you feel that stress overwhelming you, take a step back, allow your creativity to come in, and that learning process is going to be cemented in your brain. Next, make space to dream. You have to make space to dream. Let your brain challenge the limits of what's currently possible. So what does it have to do with learning? Learning is really challenging your brain, right? So if you're getting stuck in learning, your brain thinks it's reached the limit of what's currently possible. So you have to back up a second and make space to dream. Let your brain realize that there's a bigger world out there. There's a bigger world of possibilities than the one you're currently experiencing. Curiosity and creativity make what you're learning stick. So start asking more questions. One of the biggest limits to creativity is when we stop asking why, right? And it's the age-old joke of the 3-year-old who has the endless string of why. And I'm not saying to become a 3-year-old again, but when your why actually has a question behind it, and if you have a 3-year-old, make them ask why what, right? And they're like, why? You're like, why what? Make them define the question. What are you actually asking? And as adults, we want to do the same thing. When we ask why what? But the second part of this is don't settle for the easy, fast answer. And this circles back to what I said at the beginning, right? Come up with 3 possible solutions. This is a slightly different twist in this. Did you know that unanswered questions actually keep your brain in learning mode? Your brain is searching for an answer. So unanswered questions are actually a genius way to learn. And this is actually why the Socratic method was about asking questions. But don't rush to the first solution, because sometimes the first solution is not the best solution. All right, so next, learning is contagious. So here's a sobering fact. You will become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So my takeaway with this is choose wisely. So what does this have to do with learning? Find people on the same learning path so you can motivate and help each other. You want to get with people who want to get better, not stay the same. If you want to learn, you don't want to be around people. You don't want to be the person that wants to stay just the way you are. You want to learn and grow and be a better person. And so you don't want to curb your enthusiasm for learning and growing. And so when you get this group together, it's going to be the perfect storm. A brainstorm, sorry, I love puns. So if you surround yourself with learners, it's going to increase creativity, it's going to increase the rate of learning. And another great reason for this is it takes a village. Because guess what? At the end of the day, you don't have to learn or do or know everything, right? Don't try to do it all on your own. Find your village, find the rest of the village where your skills, your knowledge, your creativity complement each other. So that snowball effect isn't just working for you and your journey, it's working for the village. And this is what civilization and the jumps forward in technology and knowledge and culture, it's not one person moving this thing. It's as we come together and we all propel each other. So if find your tribe is what it takes, find your village, but find the people around you that first of all are going to encourage you, but return the favor. Be that person. Be the friend for them. Be the encourager for them. Encourage them, celebrate their wins, and look for the people who are going to do the same for you. And that brings us to our final point, which is teach others. So one of the best ways to cement the information that you're learning is to start teaching. When I was doing Google Sheets, one of the things that happened was I found myself explaining the same thing to multiple people. And so what it was the filter tool in Google Sheets. So I found myself explaining to so many clients how to use this filter tool in Google Sheets. And so what I ended up doing was I recorded a video. And so it pushed me a little bit, and you can go back and look at my channel and watch that video. It's a little painful for me to watch now, but I began to share my knowledge. And when I did, it forced me to gain deeper clarity and deeper mastery of the information. So teaching, explaining something, it doesn't have to be in a formal, you don't have to record a video. It could just be sharing information with friends, family, coworkers, customers, whoever it is. But when you share information, it turns into transformation. It starts to transform you. Your brain actually starts cataloging that information differently when you have to retrieve it to teach. Because it's not just spitting out a fact, right? It's like sometimes in school, we just memorize dates, right? And we spit it out, but we don't have any context for it. When we start to teach something, when we have that mode, we turn that mode on, our brain has to store that information in a way that has context, which means we have greater clarity, greater context, deeper mastery of that thing. And so whatever context that looks like for you, go ahead, share it, teach it, whatever it is, and it's going to take your knowledge to the next level. But with that, one point is just because you started teaching doesn't mean you stop learning. I've learned so much more since I started teaching. Teaching actually forces me to learn more and deeper. And so let teaching propel you to do the same thing. And so share it whatever context, whatever level you're at. If it's just a shortcut or a trick with a coworker, share it with them and allow that to propel you to the next level. And so with that, let's wrap up this video. So just for review, there are the points that we went over today, but I want to share that learning isn't something that just happens in a classroom. It's a lifelong skill that you can sharpen, develop, and grow. So not only the things that you are learning, but even learning itself, you can get better at it. So when you start small, when you focus on what matters, embrace just enough challenge, celebrate your progress, spark creativity, learn with others, and share what you know, you're not just learning, you're multiplying your impact. And you might never know what that impact is going to mean to you, your family, your friends, to the people around you. So why don't you start your learning journey today? Start small and go from there. So now the question is, what are you going to learn? And how are you going to use it to make a difference? That's it for me. Thanks for watching. and have a great day.